Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of GoH Talk.
Vega.
No, not that Go. This is the Guild of Heroes Talk podcast. If you've gone astray from the Pokestop, however, then perhaps rest your feet on a stack of gold, have a tall glass of mana, and enjoy what there is to offer here. Being this is the very first ever episode, we will simply be brushing over all the podcast will be offering going forward, as well as a bit of a background towards the game itself. We will do segments in future episodes, as well as have a proper structure, but for the first introductory episode, we will put things in the salad tosser. A bit about myself first. Number 1, I am Galgamir, leader of Forest of Sherwood in the Guild of Heroes. Along with my wife, who is my right-hand officer, we, along with our fellow guildmates, tackle bosses and battle in wars against others who may seek to take our hard-fought land and castle. Secondly, I do not work for Bit.Games, the creators of Guild of Heroes, so this podcast is entirely fan-based. We will be objective and respectful towards the company. However, we will be discussing key points about the game's pros and cons and improvements. Quite simply, I'm like everyone else who enjoys leveling the character and aiming for world domination. Or maybe just server domination for now. I'm by no means a veteran player, nor am I elite, but I enjoy this game immensely, as I'm sure you all do as well. If you have by chance stumbled across this podcast, or you would like a bit more info in the background of the game, then here is a small bit of insight. Guild of Heroes is based in a fantasy world, where you inhabit a land called Greyhaven. When you first start off, you choose your path to be either an archer, wizard, or warrior. Quite simply, the aim of the game is to level your character, increase your skills and ability, and upgrade your gear and achieve all that you can. You also get to join a guild in due course, where you, along with others, can do much more powerful raid bosses and partake in wars against other guilds. Credit to Guild Arcana for this next part. More on exactly what that is soon. Greyhaven stood upon a precipice. It was the last and only outpost holding fast against the wilderness of World's End, a place teeming with creeping, slithering and rampaging beasts bent on the destruction of its human residents. No sane person chose Greyhaven as their home. They were exiles, one and all. They had been driven from the worlds of their birth for disrupting the order of things. They had disrespected institutions, given insult to authority, and spoken repeatedly out of turn. For crimes real and imagined, they had been transported across the void of space and deposited into a feral chaos of World's End. They were left to perish, and many did just that, but the strongest of them did not. World's End had swallowed one doomed attempt at colonization after another. Anyone attempting to plant a flag or stake a claim had either disappeared into the forest, gasped their last breath upon blazing desert sands, or faded, shrieking, into damp and malodorous shadows. The most common and abrupt fate was to die violently under the hands or claws of hostiles better suited to local conditions. And yet, hope survived. Greyhaven, after all, held fast. Its inhabitants refused to be consumed by that howling abyss. Their goal was not to be acquisition of wealth or the expression of science and understanding, nor was it to live in harmony with their neighbours. To make such a suggestion in Greyhaven's tavern would have invited ridicule and possibly a dagger in your side for good measure. No, the men and women of Greyhaven wanted only to leave, and to do that they would have to fight. How were they to escape? The answer to that question was not encouraging. They had a void to cross. The star altar offered a glimpse of the distance they had travelled. It showed the elemental forces that transported them and that now stood guard against their return. Greyhaven had its share of wizards, many of them powerful, but none with the ability to return either themselves or their compatriots to the worlds they considered their homes. Only one possibility was left to the exiles. It was, most likely, simply another way to die. But it was a possibility nonetheless, and it lay to the north. The path to salvation led through forests quivering with malice, along the cracked streets of ruined cities. The path stretched beyond poisonous deserts, and over the crumbling and treacherous arches of the World Bridge. It wound through dark and noxious swamps, and up the blackened shoulders of Hellfire Mountain. It terminated at the gates of a dark citadel, a twisted, black, unnatural thing that radiated disdain, yet somehow represented order. The citadel alone stood clear above the clouds. If it could resist the chaos that claimed every other part of the churning, ravenous world, the logic went, perhaps it could also be transcending it. This was an article of faith in Greyhaven. There was no alternative. Reach the citadel and force it to reveal its secrets. Then seize its power for one's own. Harness it, focus it, bend it to one's will. If there was a path home, it passed under the shadows of this wicked place and ascended the stairways within its horrid walls. Anyone that could swing a sword, loose an arrow, or call forth ice and fire gazed in the mist-shrouded distance and vowed to breach the looming gates. They swore oaths over ale, through the clouds of pipe smoke in the tavern. They perceived the tower's darkness in the depths of their cups. They felt its coldness in their dreams. Each rising sun reaffirmed its truth. One way or another, it held the key to their escape. The occupation of every man and woman in Greyhaven was to push far into the wilderness, then to push farther still, to grow stronger and push yet again. New arrivals cut their teeth in the surrounding farmlands. They took up the staff, the bow, the sword, and found in these things the power to carry them further. Into the forest they would press, and found that evil resisted their every step. Even as the forest revealed its secrets, it closed stealthily upon their flanks. Revelations dispersed quickly, sublimating into a mist that was lost at the first swing of a hostile axe or the flash and fare of a malicious spell. Beyond the primeval forest lay relics of a distant past. A fallen and crushed city leaned, rotting beneath a leaden sky. Only demons and their unholy spawn moved among its streets now, their screeches reverberating against its crumbling walls. Once a place of reason and enterprise, it now hosts only insanity. In World's End, even mighty empires were inexorably ground into dust. The strongest heroes passed through these horrors, and then clambered above them into the frozen, wintry peaks. These enclaves were held by dwarves and creatures of ice, with hearts as black as their minds, their greed as cold and dark as the shafts they had sunk into the bones of the mountains. How many survived these trials and cast their gaze upon the impassable waters below? A single highway of stone spanned its reaches. For every inch of progress over its height, tolls of blood had to be paid under the blows of hammers, wrenching talons of demons, and the soul sickness of black sorcery. Surviving the world bridge, the knights of Greyhaven stepped upon its northern bank, only to pass into darkness once more. Then their lot was to negotiate a world of moving shadows, of dark hunters whose camps were built in the pursuit of human flesh, and of venomous terrors that scuttled upon 8 legs. Surviving the arachnid forest, the heroes of Greyhaven entered a land of heat and light, where relics of submarine past protruded from shifting desert sands. More bones of another ancient civilization passed from World's End. Here were the foundations of temples and the shells of creatures that had once roamed the bottom of the sea, their cracked shells laying drying in the relentless sun. From all sides they were set upon by jackals walking upright, fighting with the skills of men. Djinn were their tormentors, wielding arrows, magic, and blinding whirlwinds of sand. Escaping from the desert heat would have brought relief in a kinder world, but introduced only new horrors. The heroes were hunted by witches through malarial swamps, plagued by vermin of the air thirsting for blood. Grotesque terrors hopped sickeningly over the slime and muck, colours brightly indicating their toxic gifts. Rising again, this time out of the terrors of the rank and fetid swamp, the heroes scaled the shoulder of Hellfire Mountain. They were engaged in a ghastly parody of urban combat, fighting creatures of the netherworld through corridors of death. Images of motherhood enshrined in black irony gazed searingly at the cherished faces of their young, or shrieked in horror, immersed in the chaos of volcanic cataclysm and demonic possession. Passing beyond the unholy gauntlet, the heroes bravely faced Mai, the 3-headed winged beast. To cross the bridge, the heroes must lay it low. Beyond the bridge stood the citadel, its shining walls cut from the volcanic glass of Hellfire Mountain. Not by the hands of men, but with magic. Dark magic with the power, perhaps, to cast the heroes back into the void. The power to carry the exiles away from the horrors of World's End and back to the worlds they had once called their own. There the exiles would find redemption and revenge. Now, that was titled Chapter 1, Exiles, on the website. Whether there was more, unfortunately, I do not know. It does paint quite the fantastic picture of what the game is about. I always enjoy having such an entailed backstory with a video game. It always gives me so much more immersion. So, what will we be covering in this podcast, you ask? Well, this game, though quite in depth, does not have many solid directions on how exactly to play it, or what to do with everything and what it has to offer. The game's website itself is Spartan, with no guide, and the in-game tips and tricks, well, they're few and far between. My aim is to bring you all some much needed intel towards improving your game and answering some questions you may have also. Now, most, if not all of my advice and information come from a couple of key websites, along with playing the game itself otherwise. Guild Arcana, that's ARCNA. The website I pulled a bit of the backstory from then is a fan-made website with a plethora of information about the game, and some background as well. The Now X player pretty much has details on each aspect of the game, what they do, and how to better it. It is now no longer up to date. However, there is little differentiation from what is detailed to what is in the game, currently anyway. There is also a Wikia page that includes a lot of useful information and has a few other bits and bobs that Guild Arcana does not. I do advise looking over these pages, readily accessible by a quick Google search, though I will include links in the show notes. So, why am I here? Well, the pages are no longer in upkeep, as I mentioned, so updates are zip, zilch, nil and nada. Beyond that, websites don't respond. If you still have a question, or things are still unclear, you've got nowhere to turn. I never personally like general chat in MMOs, as they are typically filled with unhelpful trolls. Often someone can ask a legitimate question when they are new, and feel as though they should never have even bothered to start the game in the first place. Not cool. My aim is to provide a voice, some insight, some answers, a bit of advice, and hopefully a bit of fun and enthusiasm for you. This game can give you a lot of hours of fun, especially if you like numbers games where maxing out stats, fighting all sorts of nasty and evil things, and gaining cool gear from running campaigns, dungeons, and raids is. I'll be covering various aspects of the game in their own episode. We'll go over how they work in the game, ways in which you can improve, a bit of debate and constructive criticism that comes up from people in the general chat on social media, and just some tidbits and tales of people that have actually put it to good use. We'll take a look at updates released, events and their offerings, and a few other things along the way also. Now, that's going to be all for this very first introductory episode. I plan to be releasing at least one per week, focused on key topics of the game. This episode will be hosted in iTunes, podcasts, and on YouTube. Please do subscribe to be notified when new episodes are released. If you like what you hear and want to write into the show, you can find us on social media. GoH Talk Podcast, that's GOH, on Facebook and Twitter, @GoTalk. You can write a comment on the YouTube uploads. Visit the podcast page, anchor.fm/GoH Talk Podcast. Or you can even send us an email at gotalkpodcast@gmail.com. You may even see my character in Greyhaven. If you have suggestions, comments, stories, or anything else you want to contribute, please do feel free to send me a contact. This is Galgamir, signing off from GoH Talk. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you next time.